Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be talking you through your first assignment of the BTEC first year media course, which is going to be understanding the roles and responsibilities of copywriters. This video I'm going to go through the structure and overview of assignment 1. I'm not going to talk through any of the actual specific content of assignment 1 because that's going to be saved for a few other videos, but I'm going to take you through the learning aims and the general assessment criteria for this assignment. Go through things like, a few tips and general sort of guidance for the assignment. So, the scenario for this assignment is you are a copywriter working for the BBC Journalism Trainee Scheme, and what you've been asked to do is to produce a report that explains to trainee journalists the roles and responsibilities of copywriters. Now, the idea behind this report is it's the kind of thing that will be available on their website, so the new trainee copywriters can use this to get an idea of how a journalist should and shouldn't behave if they're working in the journalism sector. So you're going to be doing this assignment as a report, so it does need to be presented professionally using an appropriate format and style. Now, I've made a template for you to use, which will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you in terms of the report, so I'll show you through that in a little bit once I've gone through what I need to go through. It needs to be very knowledgeable and informative about the subjects that we need to be talking about. And this is the big one, well, the two big ones I should say. It needs to include detailed and consistent examples. So you need to be referring to examples to emphasize the points that you're making throughout pretty much the majority of your report, as well as using regular media terminology as well. So terms that you would associate with journalism. So things like, mode of address, elaborate restricted code, all that sort of stuff that we've done a little bit of. Your report is going to focus on 3 different sections. The first 2 are quite simple and quite straightforward and only require a little bit of research, but the third section is where the majority of the hard work will be done for your report. So you're going to focus on how copywriters are used in the media industry, the role of copywriters in a variety of different media contexts, and finally the actual responsibilities of a copywriter, which is where you're going to go on to talk about things like how should they and shouldn't they behave, what laws do they have to follow, all that stuff. So section 1, this section you will explain the use and purpose of copywriters. So what are they actually used for? What do they do? Because it's not just going to focus on journalism. You will be looking at a variety of different media industries and how copywriters are used in those different areas of the media, because obviously copywriters are a kind of role that you would find in lots of different areas of the media as well as journalism. The second section, you're going to look at the actual role and talk about how they're used in those different media sectors. So what sort of work do they do? What sort of things do they produce? What do they produce content for? And then finally, you'll move on to section 3, which is where you'll investigate the social, legal, and ethical obligations of writers. Now, this section is going to be essential for getting you a distinction. It's where you get the opportunity to use all your examples, all your media terms, and go into a lot of detail of actually evaluating the social, legal, and ethical obligations. So what we want to be looking for is not just describing it, but explaining why they need to follow these rules. What are the reasons behind it? And then giving some examples that show you understand the social, legal, and ethical obligations of writers. This is going to be the biggest section, okay? You'll find the majority of the time that we spend on this assignment will be focusing on this bit, okay? And that'll become more clear when I show you the template, which I'll show you in a bit. So, in terms of the learning aims, these are the learning aims that we are going to be working towards. So you've got the use of copywriters, the role of copywriters, and responsibilities of a copywriter. So learning aim A, and then A1, A2, and A3. These 3 things here. These are things that I've taken from the unit spec, which are always worth looking at as well. For the assessment criteria, you can see here it tells you what you need to do to get a pass, a merit, and a distinction. So for a pass, it says explain the use and purpose of copywriting in the creative media industry, explain the roles and responsibilities of copywriters working in the media industry. That's pass grade. For a merit, The only thing that changes is the words itself. So it says there, analyse. So obviously they're expecting you to be a bit more critical for a merit and give a bit more examples and a bit more in detail. And a distinction, it says evaluate. So again, the key word there being evaluate. So for they looking at things like pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses, all that stuff, okay? So the key for distinction grade is the detail, okay? That's the only word that's different now, is evaluate, okay? Yeah, I'm not going to bother reading through all these things because you can read through these in your own time. But what this is taken from the actual exam board as well, that describes in detail what a distinction learner will do, or what a distinction assignment will do. So it says, for distinction standards, learners will fully explain social, ethical and legal obligations and justify their points using supporting statements, arguments or evidence, developing ideas critically, and drawing out an example precisely the point that it illustrates. They will show a clear and detailed understanding of the impact that obligations and constraints have on the writer and give a fully coherent explanation of the subsequent social and cultural meanings generated and maintained. Learners will acknowledge to some degree the power the reader has to challenge and reject the preferred meanings that are circulated. Okay, so the main points there that really you should be looking at is a couple of key terms, is things like fully explain, supporting arguments or evidence, so that'll be in the examples that you provide, developing ideas critically, okay, again critically is an important one, and drawing out of the example precisely the point that it illustrates. So what that basically means is, say for example you're talking about, I don't know, any part of the social, ethical or legal obligations we're going to look at, and you're giving an example, you're expected to be able to specifically explain why this example is a legal obligation or an ethical obligation or whatever it is you're talking about, okay, in detail, okay? I'm not going to bother reading through the merits and the past ones, but they're there if you want to look at them, so just pause the video and read it, okay? But realistically, I think everyone should be aiming for this distinction one, okay? Right, so for this assignment, you're going to find that it will go past at least 2,000 words. There isn't a word count for it, but in my experience, I've found that if it's less than 2,000 words, it's very likely that it's probably not gone into enough detail as it needs to. So you'll probably find that you should be able to pass 2,000 words really, really easily. Obviously, plagiarism is an important issue. I explain why this is an important issue in class, but it should go without saying really. You will be using some resources, okay, which I'm expected to be referenced, so I will show you how to use the Harvard referencing system, and I'm also expecting you to use a template as well, just because it will make sure that your report is going to be professionally presented, and it does make my life a little bit easier as well. You do get graded on your SPAG as well, so spelling, punctuation and grammar. Obviously, given the fact that it's meant to be a report, and it's a report for the BBC, you'd expect the SPAG to be spot on, okay, as well as being professionally presented. So what I want from a report is consistent font structure, font size, use of headings and subheadings, and correct use of subject terminology as well, okay? So even though it's a written report, it's going to be a professionally presented written report. Okay. The content for this report is going to be entirely delivered through flipped learning resources. So realistically, the stuff from the flipped learning stuff is going to be what's going to get you the pass and maybe some of the merit stuff as well, okay? Whereas what pushes you to your distinction is going to be the examples that you provide. So all the stuff that I will give you will only get you that pass grade. Okay, you need to then put the effort in to push yourself up to your merit and your distinction levels. So you're going to research your own examples. I will give you some examples to look at, as a little guiding point, but you're going to be expected to critically evaluate those examples yourself and explain why they might be a legal, social, or ethical issue. But obviously you must reference any sources you have used. If you don't reference it, it does count as plagiarism, which is an extremely severe offence, okay? So I don't want any resources not properly referenced, okay? Obviously, the deadline will be specific to the actual class itself, so your deadline can be found on the top of the assignment brief. So when you get your assignment brief, look on the top, that should tell you the deadline that you need for this assignment, okay? I'm also going to show you this, which is going to be the template that you're going to be using to work on this assignment. So all the headings and subheadings have already been sorted out for you. So all you need to do really is just going to be answering the questions that are on this template. There's a few links on there to help you, okay, bits of guidance and stuff, but basically what you need to be working on are these black bullet points here. Now these black bullet points will all be answered by either a flip learning video from myself or a website or source that I found for you that will give you the answers that you need, okay? Answer all the bullet points and you can't really go wrong, okay? It's pretty straightforward. So we're going to be working through this template, okay? It'll make sure that your report is going to be presented professionally so that you aren't going to fall into any traps of not meeting the criteria by, submitting a unprofessional report. So if you use this template, you should be absolutely fine, okay? Obviously, I'll go through this more with you in class, but this is just a quick overview of the assignment so you know what to expect when we start prepping for this stuff in class, okay? But any questions, any problems, you know where I am. Send me an email. I'll see you in a bit. TRC Media